The strange comfort of being alone. After 70, there's a moment in life quiet, almost invisible when the world around you keeps moving, but something inside you stops. You no longer feel the same pull to pick up the phone, to reply to every message, or to keep up with every friend from every stage of life. And then, almost without warning, you realize you're not lonely. You're at peace. This realization can feel strange at first. After all, we've spent most of our lives being told that the more friends we have, the happier we are. That staying connected, staying busy, staying available is the path to a meaningful life. But what if it's not? What if? After 70, the path to meaning looks completely different. What if joy isn't in the full calendar, but in the empty morning, not in the long phone calls, but in the quiet sips of tea alone, not in being seen, but finally, truly being with yourself? In this video, we're going to walk gently through a different kind of truth, one that many older adults feel, but few talk about out loud: the truth that you don't need a crowd to feel whole. You don't need friendships to feel valuable, and you certainly don't need to chase connections just to feel alive. There is something waiting on the other side of that old belief, something softer, lighter, more peaceful. And in the next few minutes, we're going to explore what that is together. If you've ever felt this shift in your own life, that sense of pulling inward rather than reaching outward, please comment on the number 1 below. If not, that's okay too. Just comment 0. I'd love to hear your thoughts either way. And if anything in this message touches your heart, please consider subscribing and turning on the bell so we can keep walking this path together. Let's begin. Number 1. You no longer owe the world an explanation. Freedom begins when you stop performing for others. When we're young, we spend much of our energy trying to belong. We tailor our conversations to be liked. We smile when we're tired. We accept invitations we don't want just to keep the peace. We explain ourselves. We justify our choices: where we live, who we love, how we spend our time, hoping others will nod in approval. But by the time you reach your 70s, something shifts. You begin to realize you no longer owe anyone an explanation. This is not bitterness. It's not indifference. It's something gentler: clarity. Let me tell you about Edith. At 75, she looked back at her life and saw a timeline full of proving she was a good mother, a competent worker, a helpful friend. She kept relationships alive just so no one would feel offended. She'd say yes to gatherings out of fear she might disappoint. She was exhausted. One day, after turning down an invitation to a weekend trip that didn't feel right, she sat on her porch, wrapped in a blanket, drinking tea, and for the first time in years, she felt something new: ease. There was no need to explain why she didn't go. No phone calls to justify her decision. No guilt. Just peace. In that quiet moment, she whispered to herself, "I don't have to keep performing, and neither do you." By the time we reach this stage in life, we've carried enough the expectations of others, the weight of obligation, the masks we wore to be accepted, but now we get to set them down. You are not unkind for stepping away. You are wise for knowing when enough is enough. And you're free to live as you are, without explaining why. Because real freedom isn't about being left alone. It's about finally allowing yourself to just be. And that feeling is more fulfilling than 1,000 empty friendships. Coming up next, what happens when peace becomes more precious than popularity? Number 2, peace becomes more precious than popularity. Quiet is no longer empty, it's sacred. There comes a time in life when silence stops feeling like a gap and starts feeling like a gift. In our earlier years, we filled every corner of time with conversation, company, activity, noise. We were afraid of the stillness, of being seen doing nothing. We mistook solitude for failure and busyness for success. But as we grow older, something begins to change. The value of peace, deep, uninterrupted peace, quietly rises. It's not that we reject people. It's that we begin to choose where our energy flows. The chaos of maintaining constant contact, of responding, of keeping up, starts to feel heavy. A crowded calendar no longer feels like a sign of abundance, but a weight we've carried far too long. There's a difference between being engaged and being exhausted. Many of us, for decades, didn't know that line. We gave time, attention, and presence to everything that asked for it without ever asking ourselves, do I truly want this? Now and after 70, the answer becomes clear. We are no longer here to be endlessly accessible. We're here to be deeply present to ourselves. Peace becomes a form of wealth, and like any treasure, it must be protected. That means declining some invitations, letting go of conversations that go in circles, releasing the urge to prove we're still in the loop. It means being brave enough to say, I choose silence today. I choose space. I choose me. In that space, something profound happens. We begin to hear the soft voice of our own inner wisdom, the one that was drowned out for so long. And it tells us this: you don't need noise to feel alive. You need alignment. As we go forward, we realize that true joy doesn't come from being everywhere, it comes from being exactly where you belong. Coming up next, why fewer connections often bring deeper contentment. Number 3, less connection, more contentment. Not everything we let go of is a loss. There is a quiet misunderstanding that often follows us into older age that fewer friendships must mean something's wrong, that a smaller circle equals sadness, that solitude equals deficiency. But what if it doesn't? What if the shrinking of our social world is not a failure, but a form of refinement? As the years pass, we begin to feel the difference between connection and obligation. We learn that not every call is nourishing, not every relationship is mutual. We grow tired of conversations that leave us drained, of exchanges that feel forced, of relationships that remain out of habit rather than heartfelt care, and slowly we start to release. What we don't always realize is that in letting go of certain friendships, we also let go of certain disappointments. The ones that built quietly, missed birthdays, one-sided efforts, forgotten gestures. Over time, they weigh more than we admit. Carrying those disappointments silently often hurts more than walking away. So we begin to choose differently. We don't stop caring, we simply stop clinging. We begin to value sincerity over frequency, presence over performance, peace over politeness, and something surprising happens instead of feeling emptier. We begin to feel fuller. With fewer conversations to manage, we can listen to our own voice. With fewer expectations to meet, we breathe easier. With fewer performances to uphold, we finally relax into being. This isn't withdrawal, it's alignment, not loneliness, but clarity. Because the truth is, not everything we let go of is a loss. Sometimes, it's just making space for a version of life that feels more honest, more manageable, and more joyful. Coming up next, why time, not friendship, becomes your most sacred currency after 70. Number 4, time becomes your most sacred currency. At this stage, how you spend your hours becomes how you live your truth. When we are young, time feels like an open road infinity, wide, forgiving. We give it freely to everything and everyone: casual meetups, phone calls that go nowhere, obligations we barely understand. We stretch ourselves thin, believing we can always make more time tomorrow. But after 70, time changes shape. It no longer feels endless. It feels rare. And suddenly, how you spend it becomes one of the most important questions of your life. Each morning, each afternoon, each quiet evening becomes a choice. Am I giving this time to something that truly matters to me, or am I spending it out of habit, guilt, or fear of disappointing others? You begin to realize that your hours are not small things. They are your soul's final canvas, and you deserve to paint it with colors that reflect you. This doesn't mean rejecting everyone or isolating yourself. It means being intentional. It means honoring your energy and recognizing that not all conversations are worth the cost, that not all relationships deserve a slice of your final years. Time in this stage of life is no longer just about productivity, it's about meaning. You no longer ask, what am I doing today? You begin to ask, does this add peace to my heart, Does this make me feel alive? If the answer is no, you learn to let it go, without apology, without shame, because at this age, you've already given so much to the world: your time, your care, your presence. Now it's time to give something back to yourself: space, stillness, choice. When you protect your hours, you protect your essence. And when you no longer give away your time without thought, what's left is not less, it's pure. Coming up next, why your emotional energy deserves the same protection as your time. Number 5, your emotional energy is sacred. Not everyone deserves it. At this age, your peace is more precious than your politeness. We rarely talk about emotional energy, but it may be the most underestimated form of strength we carry. Every conversation, every interaction, every visit requires it. Even the smallest of connections ask for a portion of our attention, empathy, and presence. When we were younger, we gave that energy freely. We believed we could handle it all: the drama, the obligations, the roles we had to play. But as we age, we begin to understand the cost. Not every relationship is emotionally neutral. Some give, some take, but others drain. There are people who leave us feeling heavier after they've gone. People whose stories repeat endlessly, but never grow. People who demand attention, but rarely offer warmth in return. And for years, we've smiled politely, nodded in the right places, and carried on even when we felt tired deep inside. After 70, the weight of those unspoken drains becomes impossible to ignore. And finally, we begin to listen to the fatigue we've silenced for too long. Emotional energy, in this season of life, is not something we can afford to spend carelessly. It is the very fuel that keeps us calm, healthy, and grounded. When we give it away to people or situations that don't return anything meaningful, we lose more than time, we lose ourselves. There's a deep kind of burnout that doesn't come from overwork, but from overfeeling for the wrong things. We've all had days like that. Days when one phone call leaves us rattled for hours, when one interaction opens up old wounds, when we walk away wondering, why did that conversation affect me so much? That is emotional depletion, and it matters. Protecting your emotional energy means honoring your inner life. It means recognizing that not everyone has a right to your thoughts, your feelings, your heart. You can care about someone and still step back. You can love someone and still choose silence for your own healing. You no longer have to pick up the phone every time it rings. You no longer need to attend every gathering out of politeness. You no longer owe anyone your emotional availability. This isn't coldness. It's wisdom. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors carefully opened to those who bring warmth, not weight. When you protect your emotional energy, a beautiful shift begins to happen. You stop feeling guilty for needing space. You begin to savor solitude instead of fearing it. You start listening to your body, your emotions, and your spirit, and they begin to speak more clearly. This feels good. That does not. This gives me life. That takes it away. You deserve to feel light. You deserve to feel safe. And you deserve to choose who you let into your emotional world. If something doesn't feel right anymore, you can say no. If a conversation leaves you tired instead of nourished, you can walk away. You don't need to explain. You don't need to apologize. At this age, your energy is no longer a resource to be taken for granted. It's a treasure earned through decades of compassion, endurance, and care, and not everyone deserves access to it. Coming up next, the joy of reconnecting with yourself and how solitude becomes your greatest companion. Number 6, solitude becomes your greatest companion. The quiet within you holds more than the noise around you ever did. At first, where solitude feels unfamiliar, after decades of constant conversation, invitations, check-ins, and background noise, the silence can seem too loud. But something happens when you sit with it long enough. It begins to soften. The stillness that once felt unsettling begins to cradle you. The quiet becomes a space not of emptiness, but of presence. You begin to hear things again: your thoughts, your breath, the whisper of memory, the hum of your own being. In solitude, you don't vanish, you reappear. There is a myth we've been told our whole lives that being alone is dangerous, sad, or broken. That if we're not surrounded, we are somehow less alive. But nothing could be further from the truth. True solitude chosen, not imposed, is not a punishment. It is a homecoming. In this space, you start to remember who you were before the noise, before the expectations, before the roles you had to play. You meet yourself again, not the version polished for others, but the one that is raw, real, curious, and kind. And that reunion can feel like peace. Because here's the truth no one told you. You are not incomplete without company. You are not missing out when you choose a quiet evening over a crowded room. You are not invisible when you walk alone. You are simply aligned, living in tune with what feels honest, gentle, and sustaining. Solitude is not isolation. Isolation is feeling cut off. Solitude is feeling connected to yourself. You laugh when you feel like laughing. You cry without judgment. You take up space without needing to shrink. And in that space, something grows: trust in yourself, joy in small things, and a kind of strength that doesn't roar, but roots. There will always be voices that say you should be more social, that you need more people around you, but you get to choose which voice you listen to. And sometimes the softest one, the one inside, is the truest. Solitude is not the absence of love. It is the presence of deep love for yourself. And once you find comfort in your own presence, something shifts. You no longer chase noise, you begin to attract meaning. Because the moment you stop seeking approval, the right people start to appear. Coming up next, when you stop seeking approval, the most meaningful connections find you naturally. Number 7, when you stop seeking approval, real connections find you. Your calm becomes a quiet invitation to only the right souls. There's a subtle but powerful truth that unfolds in later life. The less you seek approval, the more authentic your world becomes. In younger decades, much of our energy is spent trying to belong. We adjust ourselves in rooms, change our tone, hide our weariness, all for the sake of fitting in. We smile when we're unsure. We say yes when we mean maybe. We keep conversations going just to avoid silence, and we confuse connection with constant engagement. But as the years soften us, a shift begins. We no longer feel the need to be everything to everyone. And in that moment, something unexpected happens. People start showing up not because you're reaching out, but because you're finally still. Stillness has a magnetism of its own. When you no longer perform, the masks drop. When you speak less but speak truthfully, your words carry weight. When you set boundaries, you don't repel, you refine. You make space. And into that space, the right people gently arrive. They're not loud. They're not many. They don't need to be impressed, and you don't need to be anything but yourself. This is one of the quiet rewards of letting go. When you stop chasing connection for the sake of not being alone, you discover a different kind of presence, one rooted in honesty, not effort, and the connections that remain feel effortless. Real companionship doesn't arrive when you try harder. It comes when you become more yourself. When your energy is steady, your heart is open but not desperate. Your presence is soft, yet whole. You begin to attract people who don't ask you to shrink or stretch. They meet you where you are because that's where they live too. There's no performance, just presence, no pressure, just peace. And you'll notice these relationships often arrive quietly. A neighbor who lingers in conversation a little longer, a passerby whose smile feels familiar, a relative who suddenly listens more deeply than before. They're not loud, grand entries, but soft landings. Because now, your life is no longer about volume, but about depth. It's no longer about how many people surround you, but how gently they hold your truth. You are no longer the seeker, you are the sanctuary. And from that place, the most meaningful connections unfold not through pursuit, but through peace. Coming up next, Letting go is not about having less. It's about finally having what truly matters. Number 8, letting go doesn't leave you with less. It leaves you with what truly matters. Simplicity is not emptiness. It's clear, and clarity is freedom. There's a strange fear that whispers quietly in many hearts. If I let go of this relationship, will I end up with nothing? If I stop showing up, will I disappear if I walk away? Will I regret it? But the truth is far kinder than that fear. Letting go does not mean losing. Letting go means choosing. And with every honest choice you make, you return closer to what actually nourishes you. Throughout our lives, we've been taught to hold on, to stay connected, to be loyal, to keep things going, even when they no longer bring joy, even when the weight becomes greater than the warmth. We're told don't give up, but rarely are we told this. Sometimes letting go is the bravest, most loving act we can do for ourselves and for others. Because the space that opens up after release is not a void. It is an invitation to rest, to breathe, to rediscover forgotten joys. To notice simple beauty, to live slowly but fully. When you no longer spend your energy managing old obligations, worn-out expectations, or one-sided bonds, something happens. You get your life back. Not the life others expected of you, but the one that actually fits, the one that allows you to rise when you're ready, not when you're summoned, the one where your days are shaped by what fills your spirit, not your calendar. And you begin to understand something profound. Clutter in friendships, in time, in emotional space is not a sign of fullness. It's a sign of avoidance, avoiding the truth, avoiding change, avoiding the deeper call of your own life. But when you clear the clutter, when you let go, what remains is real. Maybe that means one meaningful conversation instead of 10 small ones. Maybe it means a quiet dinner alone instead of a noisy lunch with people who don't really see you. Maybe it means fewer friends but more presence. And in that space, everything starts to breathe again. Your heart beats slower. Your mind quiets. Your soul finds room to unfold. And you realize this is not less, this is more. More intentional, more peaceful, more yours. Letting go doesn't strip your life bare. It reveals what was always there waiting for you beneath the noise. So if you've been wondering whether it's okay to release something or someone that no longer brings light, yes, it is more than okay. It is courageous. It is wise. And it is a gift you give to yourself, a life with fewer distractions and more devotion. Coming up next, in the quiet that follows, you begin to hear what your soul has been trying to say all along. Number 9, in the quiet after letting go, you hear the voice you've been missing. Beneath the noise of others, your own truth has been waiting patiently. There is a sound we often forget to listen for. Not a voice on the other end of a call, not a conversation across the table, but the gentle, persistent whisper that has lived inside us all along. Your own voice. For years, decades. Even that voice has been layered under the voices of others. The expectations of family, the opinions of society, the needs of friends, the noise of keeping up, fitting in, pleasing, belonging. And while we lived in that rhythm, we hardly noticed our own inner voice. Went quiet. It didn't disappear. It waited. And now, after letting go of what no longer fits, of relationships that no longer reflect who we are, something happens. The noise fades. The space opens. And from that space, your voice begins to return. At first, it may sound unfamiliar, like hearing a childhood song you almost forgot. But slowly, that voice grows clearer. Softer than advice and wiser than opinion. It doesn't push. It doesn't beg. It simply tells the truth. Your truth, what you actually love, what you actually need, what you no longer have to explain. This is one of the great quiet gifts of growing older, the return to yourself, not to the person others expected, but to the one who was there all along, under the layers. You begin to remember the books you wanted to read, not the ones people praised. the paths you wish to take, not the ones that looked impressive. The way you like your mornings, your afternoons, your breath. You begin to live in rhythm with you, not with the crowd. And in that rhythm, everything begins to soften. You stop rushing. You stop performing. You stop seeking approval. Instead, you begin listening. And the more you listen to that inner voice, the stronger it becomes. It starts guiding your choices gently, clearly. It helps you say yes when something feels right. And no, when something doesn't, it reminds you that you are allowed to live simply, to rest more, to protect your peace not because you're fragile, but because you're finally wise. In the quiet after letting go, life doesn't feel empty. It feels aligned. And that alignment is what we've been yearning for all along. So if you've been wondering what comes after letting go, it's not loneliness. It's not silence. It's not regret. It's the return of your own voice. And with it, the return of your freedom. Coming up next, aging without attachments, the freedom of loving without needing to hold. Number 10, aging without attachment. The freedom of loving without holding on. True connection doesn't need possession, it simply needs presence. As we grow older, something in the heart begins to shift. Where once we held tight to people, to moments, to relationships now, we begin to loosen our grip. Not because we've stopped loving, but because we've started loving differently, more gently, more freely, without the need to cling. In our earlier years, and we often confuse love with permanence, we believed real connection meant constant contact, that showing up had to be measured in effort, in how often we called, how tightly we held, how hard we tried to stay close. But the wisdom of aging offers us a softer truth. The deepest connections don't ask for possession. They ask for presence, to simply be with someone when the moment is right, to hold space for them in your heart, even when they're far away, to wish them well, even if you're no longer walking the same path. This is not detachment. This is peace, because love, real love, does not demand constant proximity. It does not wither with silence. It does not need proof through repetition. It trusts, it breathes, it releases. As you step into your later years, you begin to understand that the greatest form of love is non-demanding. It allows others to be as they are. It allows you to be who you are. And in that gentle allowance, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel lighter. No more holding people in fear they'll leave. No more carrying expectations they didn't ask for. No more needing to be needed. Instead, you love as the sky does, steady, spacious, ever present, but never clinging. This kind of love can exist in silence. It lives in memory, in moments, in simple thoughts that rise quietly. I'm grateful for them. Even now, there's freedom in letting go of attachment, not because people don't matter, but because they matter so deeply. You don't want to hold them down. You want to let them live. You want to let yourself live. And so you stop chasing. You stop reaching out just to maintain the old rhythm. You stop measuring the health of a relationship by how often you talk. Instead, you tune in to how it feels. Does this bond bring calm? Does it add to your days or take from them? If it's meant to remain, it will remain naturally, not forcefully. You don't lose people by letting go of control. You lose the burden of needing things to stay the same. Aging teaches us the people who are truly meant for our journey will meet us in peace, not with demands, not with guilt, but with grace. So you begin to release not only the people who no longer fit, but also the need to define what love should look like. You start to understand the most beautiful love in later life is often the quietest. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. It simply sits beside you in a thought, in a memory, in a breath, and that is more than enough. Coming up next, in the final chapter, we bring it all together, the beauty of choosing yourself, gently, unapologetically, and completely. Number 11, choosing yourself gently, without apology, and completely. After everything, You are the home you've been seeking all along. There is a quiet power in choosing yourself, not as an act of rebellion, not out of bitterness, but as a soft, kitty, steady return to the center of your own life. For decades, you've given endlessly to family, to friends, to work, to the roles and rhythms expected of you. You've cared, you've listened, you've shown up even when tired, even when unseen. And now, in this season of life, something inside says it's time to come home to the parts of you that were put on hold, to the dreams delayed, the mornings rushed, the quiet that was once traded for conversation, the truths you silenced to keep the peace. Coming home doesn't mean shutting out the world. It means opening the door inward. And what you find there in that quiet, sacred space is something extraordinary. You, not the version others needed, not the version you built for approval, but the you that is unhurried, unmasked, unafraid, this self who is whole even without company, who is joyful even in solitude, who is allowed to rest, breathe, wander, and wonder without guilt. You begin to understand that your own companionship is not a consolation prize. It's a treasure. You are no longer here to prove. You are here to live lightly, deeply, and on your own terms. And in choosing yourself, you do not lose love. You invite truer love, love that respects your silence, love that meets you where you are, love that doesn't need performance, only presence. You've walked through so much change, grief, growth, letting go, and through it all, you are still here softer, perhaps, but stronger, quieter, but deeper. This life, your life is yours now more than ever, and you no longer need permission to enjoy it. So take the walk alone, sit in the quiet, say no without guilt, say yes without fear. Let your days reflect who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. Choose the book, the nap, the morning light, the unspoken prayer. Choose peace over proving, stillness over striving, and above all, choose you. Not because you're all that's left, but because you're everything you need. Coming up next, in the final reflection, we look back, we breathe, and we embrace the beauty of becoming whole, coming home to yourself. The journey was never about losing friends, but finding peace, and perhaps the truest companionship was always waiting inside you. As we reach the final words of this reflection, take a moment, breathe, close your eyes if you wish. Let the stillness settle in your chest. This was never just about friendships. It was about something far deeper, about coming home to yourself. For most of our lives, we chase connection as proof of value. We measure our worth in relationships. We carry the weight of staying connected as if it were a duty, a lifeline, a sign of being alive. But as we age, we begin to realize the most profound aliveness does not come from how many people are around us. It comes from how deeply we inhabit our own presence. You are not less whole because you've stepped away. You are not isolated because you've chosen peace. You are not invisible because you've grown quieter. You are simply becoming more rooted, more real, more radiant in your own way. There's a kind of joy that doesn't need applause, a kind of love that doesn't need to be loud, a kind of life that doesn't need to be crowded to be full. And that is the life you're allowed to choose. A life shaped not by obligation, but by intention, not by what others expect, but by what you truly need. So today, may you walk away from this message not feeling alone, but feeling complete. And if anything in this journey made you pause, made you smile, or brought you peace, please take a moment to share. What part of this touched you most? What are you choosing to carry forward? Your story matters. Your voice is heard here. Leave a comment below. I read every word. And if this video found its way into your heart, I invite you to subscribe and click the bell icon so that in the quiet of your life, these messages will continue finding you. Thank you for spending your time with me today. You are never alone because the most beautiful companionship is the one you build within yourself. Until next time, stay well, stay gentle, and above all, stay true to you.